And we'll call the meeting to order now. Just by way of information, we did have a study session. We started a little earlier today at 4 o'clock where we had a retreat where we talked about our board governance policies and went over them. You can certainly, if you're interested, see that on our YouTube channel. Is that what they call it? A YouTube something when it's time or when it's posted. So we'll begin this evening's meeting with a flag salute. We have our student representative is going to do that for us tonight.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, student representatives. So could we get a roll call, please?
Steve Christensen.
Present.
Aaron Richardson.
Present.
Present.
Excuse.
Scott Lehrman.
Present.
Vanessa Kudos.
Present.
Isabel Stoll.
Present.
Amy Phillips.
And she is excused. She's with her family tonight at a family reunion. So, all right, agenda review. Ms. Whitney.
There are no additions or changes, and we will not be requesting an executive session.
Okay, very good. Special recognition tonight. Mr. Shane Edinger, would you want to do that for us, please?
I would be happy to. Thank you very much. Good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. Tonight we bid farewell to our 2017-2018 Student Board representatives, Kristana Craig, Vanessa Kuros, and Isabel Stoll. They are a group of remarkable young students who have definitely made an impact on the Pasco School District. Vanessa Kuros and her family moved to Pasco when she was in third grade. She attended Twain and Frost Elementary Schools and Stevens Middle School. During her senior year at Pasco High, Vanessa served as the vice president of the National Honor Society. She was a member of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council and was also a member of the girls' varsity tennis team. She will be attending WSU Tri-Cities in the fall with plans to study business administration and civil engineering. She earned scholarships from the Pasco Education Foundation, the Hispanic Academic Achievers Program, and WSU Tri-Cities. Isabel Stoll is a lifelong Pasco resident. She attended Angelo Elementary School and McLaughlin Middle School and graduated from Delta High School earlier this month. Isabel earned her seal of biliteracy this year, completed an internship with the Red Cross, and was a member of the National Honor Society, Natural Helpers, and was also president of Delta's International Club. She was also involved in the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council and was a member of the Chiawana High girls softball team. Isabel was Delta's valedictorian and will be attending the University of Washington, where she plans to major in biology with a minor in math. Sounds pretty easy. Well, she earned scholarships from the Pasco Education Foundation, the Hispanic Academic Achievers Program, and the Red Cross. Kristana Craig couldn't be with us here tonight, but she has been a very active student representative this year. In addition to her board meeting duties, she's been active with the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council and served as president of Chiawana's Pre-Med Club. Kristana will be a senior next year at Chiawana. She'll serve as the school's ASB vice president and as National Honor Society president. She plans to attend Howard University after graduation next year. It is always fun to watch our student board representatives transform from uncertain and possibly even shy young high school seniors to confident high school graduates who are ready to take on the world, and this year was no exception. We do have some tokens of appreciation for you. We'll bring that up to you now. Congratulations to Vanessa and Isabel on your graduations, and best of luck in all of the adventures that await you.
So it looks like we've got some framed photos with a certificate in there? Oh, nice.
It's a
Yes. Oh, well, isn't that special? All right, so what goodies did you get? A clock? Oh, nice.
You're so cute. So,
Okay, so there you go. So is that a clock with hands on it? Oh, good, nice.
Yeah,
So,
I can read a clock with hands.
so back when I was going to school, that's what we used for an alarm. I don't know if that has an alarm on it, but we've come a long way since then. But, we want to thank you, young ladies.
Yeah, they do. The clocks have our names on them.
Oh, nice. So that's good.
Thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
you. Thank you for serving this year on our board. We appreciate your insight, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors.
I just want to add, I thought our student representatives were fantastic this year. Ms. Craig, Ms. Kyrdos, and Ms. Stoll gave really invaluable input, I felt like, in many of our discussions of really important issues, and much wiser than I was at that age, and just think it's such a great thing that we do as a board and district to have the student representatives. They're going to do great things, and I look forward to our new representatives for next year and to hearing their input. And we really try to, I certainly take that into account as a very primary direction or indication of what needs to be done in our schools. So thank you so much for your service.
All right, well,
I'll say thank you also, and thank you for providing student voice, and best of luck in your future, and hope you continue providing leadership to your communities, and best of luck at college.
Thank you.
And I'll also say thank you, and hope that you'll come back to visit us. And let us know how you're doing.
For sure. Thank you.
So, President Christensen, if I can, I just wanted to thank you both for being on our school board. And I told both of your parents, and I'm going to say it here in front of everyone, that if I would have been blessed enough to have daughters of my own, I would want them to be just like you. And it is going to be an incredible thing to watch you go out into the world and make such an incredible difference. And if you ever need anything, I'm an email, a phone call, a text away, and we all are here for you. You are just an incredible representation of this community, and you are going to go on to do just incredible and amazing things. So thank you for being who you are, and continue that journey forward.
So you will certainly have an opportunity to say things later in our meeting, but if you want to say something now, you're welcome to. If you don't want to, don't feel obligated to. So. All right. Very good. So we have a lot of people here tonight, lots of red shirts. Thank you for teaching in our district. I'm assuming that's what you're all from Pasco and wearing red shirts. So we hope you're in our district. If not, we welcome you to our district. So now we are moving to audience comments. Because there are so many people here, I don't know if you all want to speak, but we will limit it to 2 minutes, okay? So we welcome what you have to say. If you want to address the board, please tell us who you are, tell us your name and your affiliation with the district. And Ms. Thornton over here has the red and yellow cards. Yellow card will come up with, is it 30 seconds remaining or 15? 30 seconds. So when you see that card, and then when the red card comes up, I will ask you to finish your thought, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay? Looks like we have a candidate up there already. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Christensen, Board, Ms. Whitney. My name is Melissa Reed. I am the mother of a soon-to-be 5th grader at Rosalind Franklin STEM Elementary School and a recent graduate of the soon-to-be named Pasco Early Learning Center, who will be a kindergarten at Rosalind Franklin STEM Elementary School. I understand that politics is often born from a frame of reference. So sometimes we disagree because we have different human experiences, not because one is good and one is bad, or even that one is wrong and one is right. We are compelled as a united country to look deeply for our commonly held We are compelled as a united country to look deeply for our commonly held and loved values, and therein lies our answers, not an ideology born from a singular human experience, but from values born in a vision for freedom, liberty, equal treatment under the law, and equality. America is better than putting children in chain-link kennels. We are better than separating children from their parents. Even with last week's temporary executive order changing some portions of detainment procedures moving forward, children currently detained will remain separated from their parents, and there is no guarantee that a fix is permanent. That is unconscionable to me. I will always believe that our responsibility as a nation of immigrants is to treat immigrants humanely as long as they are on our land. Whether we allow them to stay or not is an issue of politics, but the way they are treated while they are here is an issue of moral imperative. I'd like to make a formal request, Mr. Christensen, that you take under consideration a board resolution stating objection to any immigration policy that separates children from their parents when all parties are detained, and that any children separated should be immediately reunited with their parents,
Okay,
provided
Mrs.
that
Reed, if you want to finish that thought, I'll give you.
provided that the welfare of the child is not compromised by reunification. You have the privilege of setting board agendas, so this rests on you. Our district
thank
is
you.
rich with immigration stories, both from generations
Reed.
past and current immigrant students. The issue
Mrs. Reed.
is about inherent value of all people, our own immigrant.
Mrs. Reed, thank you, but we need to, I appreciate that. You can email that to us if you'd like, but we've got other people, I believe, that want to speak, so we're going to limit it to 2 minutes. Okay? Thank you.
President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. My name is Scott Wilson. I'm a teacher and president-elect of the Pasco Association of Educators. And I just want to recognize, again, all of these teachers that are here today who have answered the call of their local to come and be present, to be seen, to make the statement that we are united in what we want for our district. So I just wanted to make sure that that got put into the record, and appreciate your service in what you do, as I know you appreciate the service that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Hi, board. I'm going to finish Melissa Reed's comment for her. I'm Hattie Osborne, teacher and community member. I'd like to make a formal request, Mr. Christensen, that you take under consideration a board resolution stating objection to any immigration policy that separates children from their parents, where all parties are detained, and that any children separated should be immediately reunited with their parents, provided that the welfare of the child is not compromised by reunification. You have the privilege of setting board agendas, so this rests on your shoulders. Our district is rich with immigration stories, both from generations past and our current immigration citizens. The issue about the inherent value of all people, our own immigrant population included. Not every issue of politics is worthy of our discussion or position, but this is an issue of unique significance. Families in Pasco deserve to know that they are safe and welcome in our schools. This board has come under scrutiny in the past for being largely Caucasian, not representing our city's minority populations. You have the opportunity now to use your privilege to assure our city that has the sanctity of the family unit is a value that the board holds in esteem. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Good evening, President Christian, board members, Superintendent Whitney. My name's Nathan Grimm, Pasco resident, taxpayer. I have a wife who's an employee of yours. I would like to remind the board that we are a nation of citizens. While we can argue politics and policies, we are a country of rules and borders and laws. And people who don't follow those get in trouble. And that's a sad thing. And while I support education and educating people, I don't think it's the board's position to step in immigration policy. I would also like, as my email to the board a few weeks ago, to ask you to consider action on our current unhoused student population, which my rough estimate at that time said we're probably $300 million behind building schools, permanent facilities for our students. We just passed a bond. We're going to build some new facilities. In 5 years, we're going to be, according to your capital facilities plan numbers, 500 or 600 students over the overcrowding we are today. So while we're addressing the growth we're projecting, we still have done nothing to house the students who are currently in portables, and will be more crowded in 5 years than we are now before we build the buildings. So I'm requesting that the board take action to increase capital spending, and I would be happy to provide my input or ideas around those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Anybody else wishing to address the board?
Good evening, Steve Christensen, President of the School Board, Michelle Whitney, and members of the school board. I'm the old man here, and I call it as it is. I appreciate personally everything you've done.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Oh, excuse me. Jerry Brazington, fifth grade teacher, Virgil Robinson Elementary. I appreciate everything you guys have done for us and for me and my kids and for all of our kids. We cannot do anything without support of our school board. You know why we're here, why we're all dressed in red. Money has come from the state legislature down to us. We're just asking that we get what is due to us. I personally think you have the best of the best teaching in this school district, and I'd hate to see any of them go anywhere else. And truly, I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brazington. Anybody else wishing to speak? Second call. Final call for those wishing to speak. So, okay, we'll close the public comment section of our meeting. I will tell you, you're welcome to stay. We do a lot of mundane business here, but it's important work. But we we appreciate you coming tonight. We see the red shirts. We appreciate that you are teachers in our district, and so thank you. So we will move on to item number 7 on the agenda, approval of. I don't think that's. Oh, it is. Okay, approval of minutes from our last regular meeting. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes from June 12th, 2018.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes for our regular meeting of June 12th, 2018. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Or yes?
Yes.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay. It's one of those words. How about aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there any nays? Motion carries. Consent agenda. So we have personnel, we have warrants, overnight student travel, Pasco High School yearbook club to yearbook camp in Eastern Washington University in Cheney, Washington. Approval of the Career and Technical Education Program 3-year plan and the Carl Perkins grant application and the assurance statements for the 2018-19 school year. Overnight student travel, Chiawana High School cheer team to the UCA Varsity Resort Camp in Centralia, Washington. Overnight student travel, Chiawana High School girls soccer team to the Eastern Washington University Eagle Team Camp in Cheney, Washington. Out-of-state overnight student travel, Chiawana High School girls volleyball team to the University of Idaho Team Camp in Moscow, Idaho. Overnight student travel, Chiawana High School wrestling team to the Center Circle Wrestling Team Camp in Oak Harbor, Washington. Resolution number 956, intent to construct new elementary school number 16. Resolution 955, district authorized agent for new elementary school number 16. And finally, schematic design for new elementary school number 17. So that is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve the agenda, consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on consent agenda? Seeing none, could we get a roll call, please? Yes.
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 All right, motion carries. So moving to number 9, action items. Ms. Michelle Whitney.
So, good evening, Board President Christensen, members of the board. It is my honor to be in front of you tonight to present the Early Learning Center naming recommendation. As the board is fully aware, the opening of the Early Learning Center was really a culminating effort of board advocacy for some capital dollars to support the facility, our local community's effort in acknowledging the need for it, a partnership between the ESD and our teaching staff, and just a true commitment to educating our littlest learners. So it is my honor tonight to talk a little bit about two things. One, to provide an overview of the phased-in process that was used to identify naming options for the early learning facility, and then to provide you a recommendation for your consideration this evening. So in November of 2017, we launched kind of the first phase of providing opportunities for community to be involved in identifying potential names for our new early learning facility. There was a media release done with the Tri-City Herald. There were announcements on our website. We utilized social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and our PSD app. We also set up an email account where the community and stakeholders could provide naming ideas for consideration. There were 34 names submitted from our community during phase 1. We were in a little bit of an interesting situation with our early learning facility in that we opened it mid-year, allowing or offering the opportunity for some of our teachers and families and students to move over mid-year should they choose. The majority of those folks did that. So we had people that were residents in the building, so we wanted to take advantage and really capitalize on that. So after the facility opened in January, there was an additional naming submission window open to the community. And in addition, we involved staff, students, and parents of the early learning facility. They were asked to participate, and we also got some recommendations from our Superintendent Student Advisory Council. After all of those names were culminated, the original committee plus 3 additional staff convened to review names from both Phase 1 and Phase 2. So those names really fell into 3 broad categories. One of the categories were what we've termed to be descriptors of the children and or the learning environment at the facility. Words like Allegra, Alitas, which is wings, Little Wings, Heroes Hall, Little Titans. There were also people that were designated. There were people of national and international significance like Fred Rogers or Dr. Seuss, just to name a couple. There were also names of people who had local impacts. The names represented here are just examples. There were more. They were people like past employees, Ray Reynolds, who was a prior principal at Pasco High School, Betty Hall, who was an early learning teacher for us for years, Minnie Pacina, who was a paraprofessional and home visitor for us and an advocate for our students that needed support. There were also local community advocates like Katie Barton, who was one of the people who advocated for the initial development of the senior center to be created and served on the senior center board. Dolores Gross, Luis Gustafson were both people who did advocacy for some of our students in the Lakeview community and at the MLK Center. So again, representative of our community's passion and I think an example in Melissa Reed's comments about core values that this community's held tightly for decades. And then, in addition to the categories was the Pasco Early Learning Center. The staff and students and parents that are there refer to the facility that way. So this might be a little bit anticlimactic, but the staff is recommending to maintain the name of Pasco Early Learning Center. It really has kind of self-branded itself by that name already. It's known with our legislature statewide, locally, within the ESD, the parents, the staff, and the community there call it that. That was the priority recommendation out of the facility. I think the phenomenal opportunity we have here with the robust dialogue with our community over the last 6 months or so is we have heard our community around the core values and the culture that they would like to see in that facility, and we have a real opportunity now to integrate the themes or the ideas or names of the broad categories that I mentioned into the core values and culture of the facility. So with that, we would be asking for action tonight on the recommendation to name our early learning facility the Pasco Early Learning Center.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Whitney before we have a motion? So we'll do that. If nobody has questions on the presentation, then we will take comments. So, okay, Melissa, go ahead.
As a mother of a recent graduate of the Pasco Early Learning Center, respectfully, I must disagree with this recommendation. Since the center opened in January, the entire facility and the name has felt in limbo. The children, as a background, the children who attend the ELC are ECAP students and developmental preschool students. They are already, quote unquote, different from their peers. They deserve to go to a facility that has a name just like their, quote unquote, typical peers. As our community grows, we're probably going to start seeing more and more early learning centers pop up. So labeling this one Pasco is going to call for it to be renamed again in the future. So let's be inclusive and give this center a name just like the rest of Pasco. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. All right, so
I have a comment. No, I appreciate the input, Ms. Reed, and this is actually a name that I thought was good all along. We have Pasco High School. There's nothing wrong with it being called Pasco High School, and I think, and that's certainly one way to look at it. Some people view the names, like some of those names were Spanish words. Not everyone in our community speaks Spanish, so that actually is a concern for some people. So all of those names, there's no perfect scenario, but I think the Pasco Early Learning Center is perfect. If we want to rename it in the future, that can be done. But to me, that's the most straightforward name. That's what most early learning centers across the state are called. I visited multiple early learning centers, Central Valley Early Learning Center. It's just that to me is more uniting than anything, because it just says that everyone in Pasco, this is for everyone. If we use one of those other names, that to me becomes divisive, and it wouldn't be the first without a person's name. Since we have Pasco High School, we have other facilities like that, which is consistent with what other school districts do across the state. So I'm actually very much in favor of this. I love the idea of just simple. To me, just like your shirts say, we teach Pasco, the Pasco Early Learning Center, I think is perfect.
Looks like we have another comment.
Hi,
Could-
my name.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, could you tell us your name? And
Sure.
I'm assuming you're a teacher in Pasco, right?
I am. I'm a teacher, and I also had a daughter just finish up at the ELC in the ECAP program. She was first in the developmentally delayed program. However, because I'm also a foster parent, we didn't know her full history. So when she came to us about a year and a half ago, she was misdiagnosed with cognitive delays. However, those cognition delays were not mental, like the cognition. It was not that. It was due to maltreatment and home effects. And so it wasn't a real cognition delay, it was just verbal delays. So we transferred her out of the original program she was in and into an ECAP program, which was completely and wildly amazing. She has transformed over the past year being at the ELC, and I don't necessarily mind the Pasco Early Learning Center, but I gotta say some of those other names are super cute, like Dr. Seuss. Who would not want to go to a school that's called the Dr. Seuss School? I know my 5-year-old would love to go to the Dr. Seuss School. She's still complaining about how she loves Miss Tammy and does not want another teacher right now. I wish Tammy was here, actually. So I tend to kind of mirror her statements that it would be cool to have another name and a little bit more inclusive, like everybody else has a name and a mascot. And I mean, who would not like the Cat in the Hat as their mascot? I think that's kind of awesome. So I don't know what other people's feelings are. I kind of notice like a sigh, like, oh, just leave it the Pasco ELC. However, if you have a kiddo that's there, and especially a kiddo from the hard life that my kid came from, we're actually in the process of adopting her right now. And so if you knew her background, you might feel a little bit that way too.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, sorry, Brooke Lamberson.
Brooke Lamberson. Lamberson?
Lamberson, yes.
Okay,
She is
thank
one of 6, so currently.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamberson.
Beth Gonzalez, I am at McClintock STEM. In response to Mr. Richardson's comment, I am a proud parent and a proud teacher in Pasco, and I just want to point out that just because some of those names were of Hispanic origin does not mean that they are difficult for everyone to pronounce, just as some of the other schools that are not of Hispanic origin can also be difficult to pronounce. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzalez.
Thank you. Yeah, if that's not the intention, maybe I misspoke. I wasn't saying that they're difficult to pronounce, just there's a concern. We hear concerns from all over the city, and that's one concern that I've heard. That's all I was saying, that's a concern that, that's not everyone speaks Spanish, and so, but again, not everyone can pronounce, like you mentioned, the names of all the schools, and so certainly that's not necessarily even a concern of mine. I was just sharing what has been shared and what I've heard, so.
Okay. So we'll close the public comment on this particular issue. Do we have, Mrs. Wendy, do you have anything to add? Very good. So board members, we have been asked to take action on this. We need to, we probably should. It's been,
I do like the idea of them having a mascot. So maybe with that name, they could come up with a mascot.
I would expect that would be part of the plan. I think what you were saying is there's lots of different themes, and the themes may not be the right word, but names and things that we can use within the facility itself, the center
Yes.
itself.
Yes, and it's a fairly typical process that once the school is named, then there's colors and mascots and mottos and, T-shirts and, the swag starts getting developed and all of that. That will all happen, and I think there's some real excitement and enthusiasm about utilizing names, as many of the names as possible. I mean, there's lots of ideas that are percolating with the staff, and so I would expect there to be some super innovative mascots, et cetera, happening at the ELC.
So I have to say one thing. We have in our policy that we'll name facilities after people, and we've named a lot who have passed away when we name them after people. And often run into things that is just lots of people don't know about when you look at people. And I'll say myself, I'm Japanese American, and I love Dr. Seuss. I read it all the time, but you see stuff like there's stuff in Dr. Seuss's past about racist propaganda about Japanese Americans, and so many of the people that we think as role models, they are role models in general, but there's hidden little things about many people, and so naming facilities after people, we'd have to look into that even more. But again, yeah, I love Dr. Seuss. I read my kids those books all the time, so I was really surprised to see that, you know, a beloved Dr. Seuss puts out racist propaganda about Japanese Americans during World War II, and many people have things like that. So just more stuff to think about as we're naming. It's not always as easy as we think.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I just want one word comment too. Yeah, I appreciate that too. And I appreciate the district that they reconvened. That if people were familiar with what happened the last time, we actually had a discussion about this in the past, and it was quite difficult. It's not as easy as it sounds. And I actually, back to the Spanish, I meant no disrespect. I actually like the Spanish names, and I speak Spanish fluently. So Alitas, I thought that was brilliant. Whoever came up with that. It's just quite complicated to come up with a name, and I think the Pasco Early Learning Center is great, and I appreciate that the district reconvened the people that had already spent time on the committee. They reconvened them and then brought them together with, I think that was brilliant, and this is their recommendation, and great. And so thank you for doing that.
So, Mr. President, I move to approve the name of the Pasco Early Learning Facility as Pasco Early Learning Center.
We have a
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we name the Pasco Early Learning Center the Pasco Early Learning Center. So do we have any discussion, any further discussion? Seeing none, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Lerner?
Yes.
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 Motion carries, so the Pasco Early Learning Center is now officially the Pasco Early Learning Center. Thank you, Mrs. Whitney.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, reports. So it looks like we've got a graduation report. Mrs. Whitney.
Superintendent Whitney, Part 2. So I am really honored to be, this is the first time I've had the opportunity to do the graduation report. It's been assigned to assistant superintendents in the past, and Assistant Superintendent Eric Bowles is actually out of town, and so I got assigned it, and as I was putting it together, I believe I will keep this report from here on out with the board's permission, because it is absolutely an honor to be in front of you celebrating what is the culmination of every single teacher's effort in this district. We all had a part in those students walking across the stage in June. And I feel just extraordinarily blessed to get to stand on the stage and watch the sea of purple and white walk down, or the blue walk across, or our Delta kids come down the aisle at the Toyota Center, or our New Horizons students for the first time graduate outside of their brand new facility. So with that, it is my honor to talk to you tonight about graduation of 2018 we have two fine examples up here, our graduates, which we can't even really tell you what to do or boss you around anymore because you're really technically graduates. So high school requirements, in addition to all the classes that our students take, they are required to complete a high school and beyond plan and pass our content-based assessments. I think the thing I would highlight and point out, and again, our two student board reps are great examples of this. So Vanessa Quiros is leaving and I know Vanessa's, and you probably too, Isabel, but I'm not sure your statistic. But I know that Vanessa Quiros is leaving Pasco High School with 40 college credits. So I think back to my own high school experience versus what our students are doing. Like I was taking history my senior year, like literally one class. They're graduating with 40 college credits. So what our students do is really not encompassed in this slide. They accomplish extraordinary things, and these two are an example of many who do those things in our school district. So Delta High School graduated on Thursday, June 7th, 29 Pasco School District students graduated. 15 of those students' home high school is Chiawana, and 14 of those are Delta. Principal Jenny Rodriguez states, "We're proud to celebrate our Delta High School class of 2018 and their many accomplishments, including I feel like there should be a drum roll, $1.2 million in grants and scholarships and a 100% graduation rate. And that is representative of all 3 local districts. So really a celebration community-wide. I got goosebumps too. I know, yes. So on Friday, June 8th, 42 students walked across the stage on the grassy area outside of New Horizons High School's new facility. That was the first time the students graduated there, and I can only speak for myself to say that the New Horizons graduation is always for me a very emotional one. These students are students who have to overcome great challenges to walk across that stage. So it's always an honor to be there to witness that. Principal Seth Johnson states this year's class was made up of students that were persistent and fought to complete their diploma. These students overcame great obstacles. This class includes future teachers, future business leaders, future counselors, and members of the armed forces, as well as vocational technicians. They leave us, they're headed across the parking lot to Columbia Basin College, Perry Tech, WSU Tri-Cities, and the military. And the staff at New Horizons High School is extraordinarily proud of the accomplishments of these kids, and it shows in their reaction every year at graduation. So Chiawana High School graduated on Saturday the 9th. We were a little bit concerned about the weather on Saturday, but everything held together actually and culminated with a gigantic rainbow at the end of the day over PHS's graduation. So what looked like a stormy day ended up to be an amazing day. So 443 students graduated on June 9th. Both Pasco High and Chiawana's numbers are not inclusive of the students who were included in Delta's numbers, just by way of clarity. Principal John Walwork states, with various athletic championships and academic achievements, this class will be remembered and celebrated for a very long time. I also had the opportunity, we go to graduation practice on Friday and help and support as the principals are running practice. And we had what I think is the first ever military reunion where a sister came home from the military unexpectedly for one of the graduates, and it happened like right there during practice. It was an amazing thing to witness, and it was a great honor to be able to be there when that happened. So Pasco High School, they also graduated on June 9th. 402 students walked across that stage. Principal Raul Sital states the class of 2018 is an exceptional group of young adults that will go on to achieve great things. From future educators to medical researchers, this group will make a positive impact on our community, not only locally but abroad. I also wanted to point out, I mentioned for the board at our last meeting that another extraordinary thing that happened was at CHS's graduation, one of our valedictorians did their speech not only orally, but then also in sign language. And I referenced that student. I wanted to point out both of the teachers are here. Jenny Hen and Amber are here tonight. Jenny is the teacher of the ASL class, and Amber is a class where the valedictorian went and volunteered to sign for some kindergartners. So 2 great teachers who impacted Bailey Easterday's life in a way that created this amazing opportunity for all of us to witness, I think, again, for the first time ever, the bilingual address was English and ASL. So an extraordinary a night for all of us. So scholarship awards, Chiawana, they're represented here. You can see there's a number of students and dollar values on this slide, but again, I feel like we need a drum roll. It summarizes 916 students, total graduates, that received, or total graduates, and of those, 392 received scholarships, and that is totaling over $8.5 million. So certainly an amazing accomplishment for that group of students. So with that, I'm going to finish the presentation that way and just say again how honored I am to watch extraordinary young people like the ones sitting up here and the ones that these teachers all represent do amazing things every day. So thank you for allowing me to do this job. I've ever gotten applause after a board report before.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitney. We appreciate your update. And just so you know how privileged we are, we have 2 very top graduates here with us. Vanessa was the valedictorian, correct? I'm sorry, Isabel, valedictorian at Delta High School. And Vanessa, of 402 students, Vanessa finished number 8. So these are very talented young women. All right, so with that, we will move on to the next report.
I just had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Julie Estes, I work at Rosenfinken STEM Elementary. There's been some rumors about graduation being moved to the Toyota Center, and I'm really hoping that doesn't happen. It's a tradition that Pasco and Chiawana now have that's unique in the Tri-Cities, and I really want to strongly urge that we keep our graduations at our stadium for ad nauseum till it's done, as well as keep Deltas and New Horizons at their campuses, because that's where their hearts are, that's where they have memories. I went to a Toyota Center graduation this past couple weekends ago, and there's no emotion, there's no attachment to that facility, so I really hope that we keep them at the stadium.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I absolutely agree with you. I did see that, and I totally agree with you. Pasco has nailed graduation. That's one of the things I've been most impressed about our school district. We do have intention. One of the concerns is seating, and I have a dream of adding seating there, and so that's already been kind of in the works. No guarantees, I'm not putting, but that's a concern that I think is valid that we want to address, and we are hoping to address in the future. But absolutely, I love the graduations at the stadium. That's awesome.
Yes. Anybody else want to comment on graduation while we're here? Okay. All right. Thank you. So moving on to athletic fields and parking lot follow-up. Dr. Susana Reyes.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, President Christensen, members of the board, and Superintendent Whitney. This evening's report is a follow-up to the June 12th meeting regarding site plans for the new Stevens Middle School and Middle School number 4. Information will include parking capacity analysis and land use efficiency. This evening, we also have with us our architects from MMEC Architects, Doug Mitchell and Dan Krupany are here, as well as Brandon Wilm from Design West. So they're here in the audience somewhere. So I'll go right into the parking analysis. This slide shows an overview of parking available at current sites, as well as what is proposed for the new Stevens Middle School and Middle School number 4. Just for your information there. We do know that McLaughlin currently has the least amount of parking slots, and anecdotally, we know that approximately 150 to 200 cars sometimes park along the street or in undesignated areas during very high peak events or high attendance events. How we determine parking capacity, as explained on this slide, it's basically determined by code requirements as well as the architect's professional judgment and expertise. Such factors as parking needs at peak times, balancing costs with those needs, and optimal use of space are all considerations. And currently, at this time, the staff recommends maintaining the current proposed site layouts for parking, which are shown on slides 10 and 11 in your packet. Regarding land usage, at the June 12th meeting, the board approved the schematic design for the new Stevens Middle School. The design defined the footprint of the building and its location on the site. That approval will now be followed by the design development phase, which will further refine the spaces, including athletic fields. Final design of those spaces will be developed in collaboration with Stevens Middle School staff, and slide 10 in your board packet represents the preliminary conceptual design. Also, at the June 12th meeting, the board approved the schematic design for middle school number 4. And the schematic design for elementary 17 is and was in your consent agenda this evening. Again, the design defines the footprint of the buildings and the location. And final design of the field spaces will be developed according in collaboration with staff. This provides you an overview of the number and types of fields in the schools. The proposed site for Stevens, as well as the new school, middle school number 4, and McLaughlin and Ochoa. Okay. So the board requested information regarding efficiency of land use and whether there may be an opportunity to compress the current proposal of the site layout at the site where elementary 17 and middle school number 4 will be located. And it may be possible to do this at the site. Once the grading design begins, we'll know more about how much it can be compressed. Currently, we believe that there may be a maximum of about 1 acre of space that could be gained. And if more space is desired, then the proposed number of fields and/or parking capacity will need to be reduced. The staff recommendation to the board at this time is that we move forward with the proposed conceptual site layout and explore the potential of gaining 1 acre more by compressing the site. As you know, we have allocated or reserved about 10 acres for future potential sale. So if we wanted to try to access another acre, we could compress the current proposed design to access that extra acre. We'd like to move forward with that proposed layout that was presented to you as part of the schematic design at the last board meeting. And we'd like to maintain the dedicated fields and playground as were noted on that preliminary conceptual design presented to you. Again, those are on slides 10 and 11 in your packet. Thank you. That concludes my brief report. We welcome conversation, discussion on any points presented this evening in response to the information that you requested at the June 12th board meeting.
All right, thank you, Dr. Reyes. So, any questions or comments by board members? Actually, let's do this first. So if we have any comments or questions for Dr. Reyes, let's go ahead and ask those. Any points of clarification? If not, then we'll open it up to community members.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. I have some questions on the new elementary school, middle school site.
Mm-hmm.
If you can go to that layout,
Yes.
proposed layout.
Is this what you were?
Yeah, on that one there. So I just have a question if we can be more efficient with that 5-acre piece of land and possibly sell it where the baseball field and the softball field are. And I just want to understand how we're laid out in other spots. So down in the elementary school, we have a shared baseball, softball field. At MAC, are the soccer fields on the baseball field there? You could go to the MAC layout if you want to talk about what we have at MAC first.
Am I going the wrong way? Oh, yeah. Let's see here.
So,
Stevens. There we go.
so at MAC, where do we have soccer fields? Do they play out above the softball? Top right above the softball fields there, just one soccer field?
I am not completely sure where the fields are at MAC, soccer fields wise.
I think it's just one.
So at MAC, we have one soccer field. So my question would be, if we go back to the new school, it's nice to have 2 soccer fields and 2 baseball fields and 2 softball fields. But if we need 2 softball fields or 2 baseball fields, is there a way to somehow combine some of these fields and use that 5-acre piece of property to sell? Because as we all know, property is at a premium right now, and we're looking at buying more property in other spaces. So these are nice to have these extra fields, but is there a way to combine it? I think the other question I had was, down on the lower left softball field, did we look at putting 2 softball fields in that piece of property there? I think, were you guys able to look at that?
Lower left, like,
The lower left, right there. If you move that softball field over, are you able to put 2 softball fields in that quadrant?
that would be.
That was a question I had at the last board meeting. Did you guys look at that?
We can look at combining some of those. The place maybe where we started from is kind of Ochoa, and this kind of matches really closely, actually. Ochoa, I think it has one less softball field, if I remember right, but I think the counts are pretty similar to that. They are a little bit, just because of the combination that you're mentioning, they're a little bit more than McLaughlin, but if we haven't hit the sweet spot, we can look at combining,
Or if we need those fields, can you move the baseball fields so they're stacked north and south, and then, put the softball fields so they're stacked, and you can slice off more property
play
there.
field
Just
in between
look at being more
the
efficient.
infields. We could look at that.
Is there should we have, over at the elementary school, we have another softball field that's stacked on top of a soccer field. Is there a reason we don't do that down here? Is it because, do we use soccer fields and softball fields at the same time, practice the same time? Is that why they're separated here? Okay. And can the elementary school, when we get crowded, whether we have 1 or 2 softball fields over at the middle school, can the elementary school field be used, or is it not adequate because it doesn't have a fence or other amenities?
I don't know if you'd want the crossover, from having middle school kids on the elementary site. We purposely kind of separated a lot of the uses, a lot of the activity, I guess, from elementary to middle school.
So how do we take care of Stevens? I saw on the slide here we said Stevens will only have one softball field, 1 baseball field, and we'll take care of that shortage by using neighboring schools. Why is that adequate or acceptable for Stevens, but we can't do that here?
The Stevens Middle School site, we know, is more constrained because of the amount of land that we have available to us. That's just the reality. And what we want to do at Stevens is ensure, obviously, to include our staff in the conversation so that the final design aligns with the vision for the school and the culture. Here we have a bit more opportunity to perhaps have additional fields. And it can certainly change, but we also will include our staff in that conversation for final design.
I just want to make sure we're being equitable when we look at these 2 schools. And if we say that at Stevens it's adequate to have 1 baseball field and 1 softball field because of space, and the kids can go play at neighboring schools, what does that mean? Elementary schools. So we're saying it's okay for Stevens to go play softball at an elementary school. If that's okay, then that's okay across the district. So I would think that should be okay here, and we use that elementary school softball field for the middle schoolers also, because the money that we're spending is the community and the districts, and not this one school that it's a nice to have. So I may be a lone voice here, but I'd like to understand that better.
Oh, go ahead.
In response to that. So the last middle school we built was Ochoa, I believe, is that right? And was that 2005, 2004? I don't know. It was before I lived here. 2002, Mr. Emaker. So this is the same challenge we run into with Pasco High, right? It's landlocked. But just because Pasco High and Stevens were built in 1950, 1960, that doesn't mean that that's the example for the school building in 2018. And so I think it's really faulty reasoning to say, well, that has to be the standard. I'm really impressed. If you can go back to the parking lot slide, that was the main point of discussion at our last meeting. But in 2002 even, I'm sure whoever was here looked at Stevens, they looked at McLaughlin, and they built Ochoa very differently than Stevens. Because why would you base a school that you're building in 2002 and now in 2018 on a school that was built in 1950? it's not inequitable. And this is where we drive the point home of equality versus equity. So equality would say, well, these are 4 middle schools. They should have the exact same number of parking stalls per student or per staff and student as all the others. So they should be all the same compared to the size of the school, and they're clearly not. But that doesn't mean that it's not equitable. Equity says we give the students and the staff the best that we can for the scenario, what they need and what we're realistically able to provide. So Stevens is on this tiny site. We cannot enlarge the site and add 2 baseball fields and 2 softball fields. But I'm amazed because this is one thing we asked for, and it was misunderstood, I believe, at our last board meeting. And one of the discussion points was Stevens was going to have less parking spots, but they literally went to the staff at Stevens and the population at Stevens and figured out what they needed. And they didn't need that many. And so if we gave them more parking spots, that would actually make their site even smaller for school functions, for their activities, for PE classes, for their buildings. So having an equal number of spaces would be a bad thing in my mind, because then you're taking away even more of the precious space there for that school. If we look at Ochoa, it's way more at Ochoa. But Ochoa has that tons of land out there. There's other schools right by it. Stevens is surrounded by lots of apartment complexes, as was shared at the last meeting. None of this is disrespectful or discriminatory. It's just a fact, recognizing that they're different sites, different scenarios, and so to base our decisions going forward on our 1950, does anyone know when that school was built? 61. So to base our decisions on the school that was built in 1961 that's landlocked is just very poor logic in my mind. So, but I agree with you saying what you've asked before, Mr. Lerman, is like, is this a need or a want? Well, let's look at the last school we built in 2002, and this is very much in line with it, maybe even more efficient than Ochoa, just like we did with Franklin to Curie. If you go to those schools, Curie improved upon Franklin. We used kind of the same model, but we said, well, hey, we can improve on that, so let's do it. That we don't want to just keep it like Franklin just because that would be unequitable to improve on the site, or to say, well, we need to limit ourselves to what Franklin was, because that wouldn't be equitable to the students at Franklin to give the students at Curie an improved building, which they do have. And that's fine. My kids go to Franklin. I've been to Curie, and Curie's amazing. That's great. That's okay. I'm glad that we improved on it. And I hope the next one will improve on it even more. And that doesn't offend me that we've improved on it. So I think the district has done fantastic at this. They involve Stevens. We are maximizing that school and that site with their input. Having less spots is good because it maximizes the use of that facility. And so to use that logic to make Stevens the model going forward, we didn't do that in 2002, and we certainly shouldn't do it in 2018. But on the other hand, we do the best we can with their input to provide absolutely whatever we can there at that site for those students.
I agree with a lot of what you said, but I just want to make sure we're looking at setting a standard, taking the baseball field as an example. If we set the standard that the middle schoolers should not play on an elementary school baseball field at one site, then that means elementary school baseball fields are not adequate for middle school softball across the district.
You go to the slide with the fields. But that's the thing. We're not saying that we don't have that option at Stevens. So that it's a
Correct. No,
question. It's
my question
it's
was
a false scenario because we don't have the option of having separate fields.
My question, though, was would we use that softball field at elementary school 17, that baseball field for middle school softball? And the response back was, we're trying not to put middle school students onto elementary school, but yet that's our solution.
But we're forced to in another scenario because we don't have the space. But why would we limit ourselves? We didn't at Ochoa. Can you go to the site that shows the fields? And this is another great example, and I'll just
which school?
The chart that shows the sports fields. So Miss Stoll gave a comment because she's an amazing softball player. If you don't know, she made the comment that it looked like one of the sites didn't have a softball field. So if you look at this, every site has a softball field, and again, there's not the space there to have 2 softball fields at Stevens, so there's not. Again, if there were, we would. So we're not saying that that's ideal or that but that's the best we can do with that site.
Correct. And what we talked about is what is required and what's nice to have. So this tells me that 1 softball field is required, 2 is nice to have.
Nothing's required. If you have an old site, you may just have a building there. I mean, that nothing is required by law, I don't think, as far as I know, because there's schools in our state.
It's our minimum
that
standard.
no, again, that's, you only can do what you can do. There are sites in our school that just have a site for their building, and they have no athletic fields. But that shouldn't be your standard to going forward adding school sites. It wasn't 16 years ago, and it certainly shouldn't be now. That's how I.
So, all right. So do we have, looks like are we lining up to comment on this? All right, so let's start with,
Could I just make one clarification before we publicly comment? The Stevens, with the board action on the 12th, allows us to move forward with engaging Stevens staff around what the actual fields will be. What you have been working from up to this point is a conceptual design done by the architect. So I just wanted to be very clear that what you see is not currently representative of the deep feedback from Stevens staff around athletic fields. There was some peripheral conversations, but there hasn't been deep feedback. That will happen next. So I would expect that there would be modifications to that conceptual design. So I just want to be really clear about that for everyone so that we're all kind of on the same page around Stevens' site.
And thank you, Superintendent Whitney. And that is the same case for middle school number 4. It's all conceptual, very preliminary, and the schematic design had to be approved by the board prior to us moving forward in the next phase, design development, which involves detailed design of our space athletic fields.
so here's, I've got some comments to make too, and you'll probably want to comment on those too. So rather than do this in multiple iterations, why don't I make my comments and then you guys can comment and then we'll finish up as a board. Does that sound fair? Okay. Mr. Architect, I apologize, I don't remember your name.
Doug Mitchell.
Doug, thank you. So can we go back to the middle school number 4 slide?
This one?
Yes. So how do you say that word down in the bottom left corner?
Burns Road?
Swale?
Oh.
Like that's swale? Okay. So we have a swale down there. Are there any others on this site that we're not seeing? Is that sufficient for this?
We don't know yet. Until we do the grading design, we're making estimates, basically.
And I know with Franklin, is that called a swale that's down there at Franklin? Are you familiar with what I'm talking
not
about?
familiar with Franklin, I'm sorry.
I mean, that's a huge chunk of land down there that's used for Franklin. So one of the reasons that I was in favor of purchasing more land for this, because I knew we would get to the point where we've got to give some to the city. It looks like we're giving nearly 5 acres, and I say give to the city. I mean, that's just part of development for the roads and other things. We've got other environmental concerns like that swale that we've got to take care of with this new design. So certainly we don't want to go and buy a property the size of Stevens to build a new middle school. With Stevens, it is what it is, and we're going to make the best of it with what we've got. On the other hand, I'm not in favor of just because we have land that we need to design to use it all. I think we've got to be wise and efficient with our money, our resources going forward. So, and I don't mean to just be talking to you, Doug, but
No, and I think, as Susanna said, we still got a long ways to go.
Yes. And so I would simply ask, I don't want to set a standard here that now we've got to build middle schools with all of this if we can't find that property, because it comes with a cost. I would be in favor even of compressing this as much as we can, just so that we can sell some of that land, recoup some of that cost, because we all know that we need more schools. And the more money we put into this one, then we're limiting what we have left to put into another one, plus we're setting a standard that, well, this is what we did last time. I look at Ochoa. I don't think Ochoa is a fair comparison. I don't know exactly what land prices were back in '02, but that was a big piece of property. Did we need all of that property? clearly not, because there's some of it that we're not using still. So we could afford to sprawl back then, but today I don't think we can afford to sprawl. And I look at this, I see two nice full-size baseball fields, 2 softball fields that have plenty of other space around them, 2 full soccer fields. I mean, this is a nice facility. Do we need that? I mean, it sure would be nice, but I think we've got to weigh that between using all of this land, or maybe we compress, and I would be in favor of compressing. I don't want to take anything away necessarily, but if we can compress this and develop more to turn back, maybe, or not develop, but leave more to turn back to a developer and recoup some of that money. And my other concern is that we set a standard that, gosh, this last school we built had all of this land, so that's what we got to do on number 5, because number 5 is not too far away. So that's my input. So now we'll listen to the community. So I did not catch your name the first time around. I think you were the one that was up before, right?
Yes, Julie Estes. I work at Rosalind Franklin STEM Elementary. A little background, I am a product of the Pasco schools. My daughters went to the Pasco schools. My husband's a former employee. My mom sat where you guys are for 16 years. So I know Pasco. I think limiting what we can do is wrong. We are expected, I'm surprised Pasco High doesn't have a new softball field yet, since we're out of compliance with Title IX, and they are required to have the girls' field as much as the boys' field. They do not get to practice at Pasco. They have to be bused to track. Sometimes they don't even get there because the bus doesn't show up. I'm concerned that Pasco High girls are getting shortchanged every single year for softball. Now we're going to add slow pitch, a whole nother thing. Now that's going to have to be shipped off someplace else because we don't have a field at Pasco High. And I'd like to see that added to plans as soon as we can, because we're against Title IX by not having adequate fields for our girls. And with softball bringing on slow pitch, or we already have slow or fast pitch, but now we have slow pitch, that's going to trickle down to middle schools. They're going to need to have the same softball field capacity as our high schools are. And Chihuahua has everything. I know Pasco's limited because of ground, I get that. But we don't have a good, adequate softball field. You can't even play PE soccer or baseball or softball on that field that's outside by the parking lot. It's dangerous. You can get hurt. And so I'd really like to see a softball field placed at Pasco High as soon as we can.
Thank you, Mrs. Estes.
Hi, my name is Leslie Coker. Good evening. I'm a little nervous up here. I'm a teacher at Stevens Middle School, also a coach. I also bargained the coaching contract. And ever since these schematic come out for Stevens, I have been, and Randy can contest to this, I've been like, we need to get rid of the track. I understand we're limited on space at Stevens, but Stevens has always been put on the back burner. It's always been the ugly stepchild of Pasco School District, and it needs to stop. The last meeting, I didn't say anything when you guys wanted to get rid of the gyms and, put more classroom, whatever. Thank you for passing forward the schematics on that second gym, because our retention rate there on our kids are very high. So I have 77 volleyball players, and one gym's not going to cut it. And if you move 6th grade back up, it definitely is not going to cut it. So I thank you on that. Looking at the field here for the new middle school, I'm kind of disheartened that you guys want to have money. Those fields are needed. The soccer field needed there. I would not scrunch down whatever you guys want to do to sell it back to the city. I know you guys want money, but it comes to our kids. And when you guys have the 100% outrageous outcomes, sports is the biggest deal. We feed into both high schools. I can't scroll back to Stevens. Thanks, Susanna. I do not want to touch it and have it go somewhere else. So when you're looking at Stevens here, we can't understand, and we still get to have input on this. We can't understand why we have a track where there's no long jump, there's no shot put, it's a walking track. You're cutting our soccer field. It's in between 2 baseball fields. I know we're kind of limited, but that walking track takes up a lot. So when you guys are thinking about athletic fields, and I'm sure I'll be voicing my opinion, so are our coaches and our staff, but we need to take a look at that. So don't cut the other middle school. because you got 2 middle schools that don't have enough fields as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Coker.
I just want to thank Ms. Koger for sharing that. And just so, my understanding was that the Stevens staff had already provided input, and maybe it's not as detailed as I thought, but by all means, we are all in favor of that. If they have input, I would do exactly what the staff wants, how they can maximize that facility. Just to be clear, the board, even on the bond that fails, from our discussions, essentially from the time I was elected on the board, I've never heard a board member not be in favor of rebuilding Stevens. So from the bond that failed to this last $100 million bond that passed, there was actually never a discussion that I can remember where anyone on the board said, we don't really want to do that to Stevens. We all visited Stevens. We've all visited Stevens multiple times. We were all in favor of rebuilding it. We are rebuilding that facility, and it's going to be top class, the best that we can do with the site. So, I mean, I've never heard any of the board members in the almost 3 years that I've been on the board say anything disparaging or discouraging about Stevens. We've all been in favor of that. We had it on our initial discussions on the bond that failed. It was on this bond that passed, obviously, that we supported. And so there's certainly not that feeling on the board. I'm sure there may be some in the community, but I've never heard any board member express that type of opinion in any discussion I've ever had. I actually this year went to their band concert in their gym. It was fantastic. And so the Stevens is not the stepchild. We're all in favor of rebuilding. This is the first school, as far as I know, that's going to be rebuilt in our community, in our school district. Have we ever rebuilt another school? Stevens.
I don't think we've rebuilt. We've
Stevens
remodeled.
is the first. We've remodeled, but this is the first school. We are going to tear it down and build them a brand new state-of-the-art school. So,
I think it would be accurate to say it's the first middle school that's been rebuilt. I believe Robert Frost were both built on site, and I believe Longfellow as well. Yeah.
okay, good. I love that we have historians here, and that's what I love about the Loyal.
Yeah,
Anyways.
institutional knowledge right out here. We
Yeah.
know.
So anyways, the board, if you hear that, you can tell them the board does not feel that way at all. And none of us have ever expressed that opinion about Stevens being the redheaded stepchild of our school district in any way. But.
And I want to clarify one thing that I heard it said that the board wants money, and we don't want money. We want what's best for students, and there's a limited amount of capital money. We have a limited amount of capital money. We need to pass bonds in order to have capital money, and if we sold any of that land, I don't know what the board thinks, but that money would be designated to buy other land for another school site, and that was the point of the discussion, and we can have debates on that, but it's not that we want to pocket the money. It's sell that piece of land and buy more land at this point for future school sites.
Okay, we have another gentleman at the podium.
All right, my name is Devin Olson. I'm a teacher at New Graysons High School, and I've been a long-time coach. Started out in McLaughlin about 14 years ago. When I first started out at McLaughlin, there was 2 portables, and we had a nice big practice field out there to practice on. Okay, we kept adding more and more kids. More and more kids, you need more and more space to practice. Okay, guess what happened to the practice field? It got reduced. Less and less land of portables out there. Okay, you need the space. You may not need it now, but practice fields are very nice to have. Okay, if you don't practice, if you're crowding people in there, it gets dangerous because you don't have enough room to practice. So space is very important for that aspect and keeping that space there for that practice. Coaches are pretty good about using the space available to them. Okay, so don't go giving up space, because once you give up that space, you can't get it back. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. So just to comment on that, thank you, Mr. Olson, and thank you, teachers and coaches of Pasco. I know we are crowded in all of our buildings, and you guys do a great job of making it work. And so we recognize that, and we thank you for that. Looks like we have Mr. Grimm.
Yes, hello again. Nathan Grimm, Pasco resident, taxpayer. I've been in the construction industry for the last, I was trying to do the math, since 2002. I'm sure there's a math teacher in the room that can help me out. I look at some of the stuff and I see an inequity. And I realize that Stevens site is landlocked. But if Stevens can get by with one field, baseball field, and one softball field, then I think the new middle school can too. And even if it can't, when I look at that design, I think there's room to scoot some things over. It's a shared site with an elementary school. I'm a little disappointed that the district and staff have not done a better job at combining facilities, say like a staff parking lot between both buildings so that's shared. Why are we building two separate staff parking lots on a shared site? And again, you could do the same thing with the visitor parking lots. Instead of having two separate visitor parking lots, have one large visitor parking lot between the two buildings. I think that the lot line could move over to where the baseball fields are without taking anything away. And I don't know how many acres that is. If someone could bring it up, I could show you what I mean.
Which one, the middle school for?
Yeah. So this lot line here could move over, and I think you could still fit all that in there to be the same as this lot line here. So I'm all for providing facilities, but I am for providing classrooms. And if we can sell not 10 acres, but 15 acres to either buy a new site or build more classrooms, we have more students in permanent facilities. I'm an advocate for students in permanent facilities. I think we're better than portables. You guys have heard me say that before, and that's the drum I beat. So I would like to see a more efficient use of that site to sell the land and put into capital so we can have more classrooms. That's what's important. I realize I played sports. I enjoyed my sports in school. I realize that those things are important, but if we don't have classrooms, permanent space for students, then we continue to suffer the effects of overcrowding, and that's far worse on students and their performance in our outrageous outcomes than not having two softball fields or two baseball fields. So I would like to see this site plan in particular utilize more shared things, parking lots, fields, everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm.
Hello, Board. I'm Trevor Dunstan. I'm a teacher, technology teacher at McClintock STEM Elementary School, also a coach at McLaughlin. I liked Mr. Lehrman's comment or question earlier about utilizing the softball field on proposed elementary school 17's field. Just something to think about towards that is that with the middle school, 7th grade sports for softball, the game time is usually at 4 p.m. and you want to be able to warm up 20 to 30 minutes before the game. With elementary school being on the west side, they don't get out till 3:40. So you're going to have middle school kids all over the field where your elementary kids are coming out. It usually takes about 15 minutes at least for elementary kids to disperse from the grounds. I think all of my elementary teachers can attest to that, at least 15 minutes. Now I know the argument again is space, conversation, but that's just something to take into account. Middle school kids are going to be there from other teams, from the school next door. They're going to be coming across. You're going to need more staff support to control all of that. Whoever the athletic director is going to have to keep all of that under control. It's just something else to think about, but I really like your thinking there, Mr. Lehrman, so I just wanted to put that out.
Thank you, Mr. Dunstan.
Yeah, can I comment real quick? I appreciate what Mr. Grimm said, and just so everyone's aware, that was an extensive discussion at our last meeting, combining the park. That was one of our desires too. Can we combine the space? The district leadership felt, and the architect, that there are a number of reasons not to do that. Is that me? one of the reasons that they felt that was not a good thing to do was because of the combining all those spaces, the exit and entry from the school would be an issue and there'd be more crossover and stuff. So, but that was absolutely something that we considered and we agree with you to a much extent. But that was, and if you want further details of that, the last board meeting had an extensive discussion. Also, I want to make a comment on the permanent facilities. One thing, it is not for certain that we would sell that land up there. We've had a discussion about having a permanent facility there that would be like an alternative learning, like a homeschool partnership or some other New Horizons, some sort of alternative learning school there. If it was a smaller school, it could be built possibly without another bond. And so, but I totally agree. Our goal as a board we've all agreed and stated that we don't want to purchase any more portables. We want to move towards getting rid of our portables and having every student deserving to be be housed in a facility.
Okay.
Oh, my turn? Okay.
Yes.
My name's Sarah Winokur. I work at Curie STEM. I'm just talking in agreement with Mr. Dunstan there. If you're using a middle school or the elementary school softball field for middle school students, we have after school all-stars program, then it wouldn't be used. Like we have the big district soccer program, and I'm sure the new elementary school will want to take part in that amazing opportunity for kids to play. So I don't think that's a good idea. I'm just agreeing. So thank you.
Thank you. So I don't see anybody else running up there. Let me just say thank you for coming and giving us your input. This is valuable to us. It helps us make better decisions, so we do appreciate it. I know it can take time sometimes, but thank you for coming, and thank you to those who have gone up and commented tonight. So, all right. So, Dr. Reyes, is there anything else? Do you need anything from us? I don't think this is an action item, so.
Right. Really, the only thing I would like to add for clarification is that the June 12th meeting was to approve the location of the schools and the floor plan. And the layout of the athletic fields was very preliminary. It's just conceptual. And we will be involving the staff for further discussion and working out the details. So just wanted to make sure that that was understood.
All right. Anything else?
Can I make one request as we go forward? That maybe a comparison standard would be what is the other standard with local middle schools? Most of our students compete with other schools, so that would be a good comparison. You know, what is standard in our local region as far as sites, and we just do the best we can to kind of be comparable.
Right. There is similarity in the layout for middle school number 4 to a local district in our area. So that was looked at. We can certainly review other districts throughout the state as well, should the board like that. But that was part of the process.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Are we good? Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 11, extended study / discussion. So it looks like we're going to have Ms. Carla Lobos talk to us about bilingual programs.
So it is my absolute honor to introduce two folks to you tonight, Executive Director Carla Lobos and Director Alma Duran. She's going to be also helping Carla tonight. So both are going to be presenting to the board follow-up recommendations from the Center for Applied Linguistics. If the board recalls, this was part of the inclusive sets of audits that have been done in our district over the last year. We are a learning organization, and periodically we bring in outside third parties to take a look at our programs. The bilingual program was on the rotation, and so the recommendations Alma and Carla are here to present to you tonight. These are a set of recommendations. They'll result in some deep planning and collaboration with teachers and staff and paras and district staff moving forward. So, Alma.
Good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. As mentioned already, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Carla Lobos, and I will be sharing with you recommendations from the Center from Applied Linguistics Bilingual Program Review. I do this every time. I apologize.
Oh, dear.
Zoom in, gonna get really close.
I'm just going to use it, yes. Okay. So English language learners are the fastest growing population in the nation schools. So Pasco has served English language learners using our bilingual model since the late 80s. In 1991, our current late exit bilingual model was implemented. Currently, 11 of the 15 elementary schools serve English language learners in this model. So instruction in the late exit bilingual model is carried out in both English and the student's native language. All students enter this program, who enter this program are English learners who speak Spanish or Russian as their primary language. Pasco's late exit model begins in kindergarten with 80% of the instruction occurring in the native language and 20% of the instruction occurring in English. The English instruction incrementally increases while instruction using the native language gradually decreases. The goal of the late exit bilingual program is to transition students into English. This transition usually occurs in 6th grade. The two-way dual language program began in 2004 with the opening of Maya Angelou Elementary. 11 years later, with the opening of McClintock STEM, the opportunity was available to expand the program, so a second two-way dual language elementary school opened. Both Angelou and McClintock students feed into the McLaughlin Middle School. Two-way dual language programs provide academic instruction in 2 languages in classrooms with balanced number of English learners and native Spanish speakers. The goal for the students is to become bilingual and biliterate in both languages of instruction, attaining high academic achievement in both languages and social cultural competence. Pasco's two-way dual language program begin in kindergarten and continue through 8th grade. The two-way dual language program follows the same instructional framework as our late exit program. However, students in this model continue in the program to at least 8th grade, with the option of continual Spanish language support to both and going into Chihuahua High School as well as Pasco High. So both of our bilingual models have been celebrated in our community and beyond. Acquiring a second language for both English learners and native English speakers has been a tight-held core value since the late 80s in Pasco. OSPI's guidance and vision now includes a focus and expansion of dual language programs in our state. In the spring of 2016, the Center for Applied Linguistics, also referred to as CAL, conducted a comprehensive evaluation of the two-way dual language program. The purpose was to provide sufficient information for strategic planning, to adjust any program components that need improvement, to straighten those areas of programs that are already in alignment with best practices, and to plan for future implementation of the two-way dual language model for English learners. During this school year, CAL conducted a review of the late exit transitional model to identify practices aligned with research on transitional bilingual program design and instruction, and to determine whether there might be the opportunity for Pasco to transition some of its late exit program into dual language programs.
So now I have the opportunity to share with you some of the research. As you're aware, in education, as in many professions, we embark in a constant cycle of inquiry and growth. We have an ethical, moral imperative to provide a sound educational program to all of our students. For this reason, it's important to be professional consumers of updated research and practices that have significant impacts on student achievement. I'm going to take this opportunity to share an updated version of the Thomas and Collier graph that many of you may be familiar with. I know certainly many members of our audience are as well. So this is an updated graph of the Thomas and Collier study that was, again, it followed students and ongoing students as programs have evolved through a variety of English service models for English learners. So one of the things that I'd like to point out to you here early on is that when you look at student achievement between the grades of kinder and even 5th grade, regardless of the program, student achievement is fairly equitable or the same for the students. The difference is really when you look into the middle and high school years, the difference in achievement is there's a huge difference in that. And that's why it's important for us to look at long-term, knowing that we have high academic standards, and we know that graduation and there beyond is really important for our students. So the very first line, which is, I think it's the blue line, that's on the very top, demonstrates the academic achievement of the two-way dual language students. So it's of students in that model. One of the reasons that that achievement is so high is because the two-way dual language program includes roughly half of the class of English models and then the other half of whatever the second language is. And so kids within that class have those language models all the time and are able to interact with some real intentionality around language acquisition, academic content, and those types of things. The next graph, just below that when you're looking at 12th grade, is the purple graph. So that purple one is indicative of student achievement for the one-way dual program. And again, the difference between a two-way dual and a one-way dual, in case that might be a different term or something that we may not be familiar with, is it is very similar to the current program that we have in late exit. However, the goal of the program is different. Where the goal of a late exit transitional program, the goal is to exit to English, so it's really a subtractive model. And a one-way dual has the same outcomes and goals as a dual language, the two-way dual language. So it's really changing the purpose of that program. After the purple line, you see the yellow line. So the yellow line is indicative of student achievement for the current program that we have for many of our students, which is a late exit bilingual program. And then the ones below that include traditional like ESL pullouts in the content areas and ESL outside of the content areas. I almost clicked it. Glad I didn't. So this outlines the key recommendations for the Center for Applied Linguistics. They are in the areas of instruction, program professional development, and implementation. In professional development, for example, the Center for Applied Linguistics recommends a full year of exploration and learning about the dual language model prior to implementation. So a full year of collaboration with staff and community regarding the possibilities of the program. The additional recommendation around implementation is to expand the program a grade level at a time if we choose to do so, beginning with kindergarten, and again with feedback from our staff, our community, and all the stakeholders. So this graphic is an example of the possibilities of what this transition might look like if we choose to embark. There are a number of unknown variables and details within the addition of new schools that we know, such as boundaries, but without getting into those types of weeds, we have the potential to dramatically increase and expand the two-way dual language program. In theory, any school that has at least one bilingual program could potentially offer a two-way dual language program at their site. We have received tremendous feedback from our community and many of our staff that would greatly support the expansion of the two-way dual language program. And as you might be aware, we have a fairly significant waiting list every year at both the sites that house that program now. So, some of our next steps. Our next steps will continue to include ongoing communication and feedback to our staff, our parents, and our community. And we plan to collaboratively explore the program model options with staff this coming school year, beginning with training for all elementary staff. Now, this is important to begin at the elementary because what we know is that all of our elementary teachers, whether they be bilingual teachers or English teachers, are teachers of language. And they support and they play a vital role in the development and acquisition of language for students. So we embarked on a partnership with Cal this year in a series of Spanish literacy trainings for our bilingual teachers. We received great feedback from our bilingual staff who attended, and many shared that it had been one of the best trainings that they had ever attended. So this is the support that we plan to continue as well. So I've shared with you some of the possibilities of transitioning to an updated bilingual program model, but at the same time, we will continue to provide support for students who are currently in our system, because even if we choose to embark in an update, we know that we're going to have students within our system or students that may arrive in the middle school or in the high school. So we will continue that through our systematic work in the PCGs that will include the intentional teaching of the skills that do and do not transition from one language to another, Spanish literacy supports, and training on instructional strategies that support English learners. We have spent a tremendous amount of time and resources on the acquisition of materials, and we also know how the instruction is delivered is what provides equity and access to students. We will continue to support staff with training on high leverage instructional strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lobos. Mrs. Duran, appreciate your presentation. So, board members, do you have any questions, comments that you would like to make or share?
I know they have the dual language for kids who come speaking either Spanish or Russian, but what about kids who come in speaking other languages? How are they helped?
So in order to provide a bilingual program model, you have to have sufficient students who speak a particular language in order to create a bilingual program. We happen to have enough Russian-speaking students to be able to provide that in Spanish and in Russian. Students who speak another language, we also provide ESL services at all of our sites, and all of our students receive English language support who may be coming from another country where we do not offer bilingual education.
Have we done any surveys, or do we plan to do any surveys at the different elementary schools to gauge the interest so that if we decide to pilot that, we know what schools to do it at?
Absolutely.
Do we have the data already? Or
No, we
plan
will
to do it?
embark in that collaboration. So this is our first step, is bringing it to all of you. And so next step would be that year of exploration, looking at interest from staff, students, community, all those pieces. So those are all pieces that we would do in collaboration with the Center for Applied Linguistics.
The other thing I'd like to add is that when the Center for Applied Linguistics was here, they surveyed the staff at the 3 sites that they were at, and all what we heard back from them was that the staff was ready to move on into a one-way or dual program.
That's great. Yeah, I was curious more about I don't want to call them customers, but students and families to make sure that, you get words that say we have interest, but you have to have, like you said, unless you want to bus people to other schools, you have to have the interest at the given school.
That is correct.
I just think the piece that I would really like to highlight and compliment both Carla and Alma on is what they are outlining for you is kind of the concept of go slow to go fast. We are not interested in turning this decision-making around in 6 months and implementing programs across the district. What we are interested in is collaboratively engaging our community, our teachers, the experts around that serve our students, and being thoughtful about the implementation. So what you will not see as a board is like us opening school next year with this in place everywhere. What you will see as a board is us being thoughtful and intentional, and if and when we're ready to phase, it'll be a phased in type of implementation process so that we all are learning alongside of each other and co-creating the opportunities moving forward. So what I would ask is patience from the board as we work through this together. The approach to this particular set of initiatives will be slightly different than what you've seen from us in the past, where, we're coming to you every month with curriculum recommendations and PCGs, and the work has been really fast over the last couple years. I really truly believe right now we need to take a deep breath and engage our experts around some of these broader program implementation pieces. So I just wanted to be really clear that what you're going to see is a shift in pace, but not a shift in passion and intention.
I appreciate that. That was going to be one of my questions, because I know that's what we're going to hear most frequently. Is when is this? Can we expect this in 2019, 2020? Are we going to have more sites? That's what people are going to want to know. I won't hold you to these numbers, but could you give us a rough estimate how many students applied for and how many we were able to accept into the two-way dual language this year?
So we tested 122 students, approximately 122 students, and only 48 English only, or students who identified themselves as speaking, controlling English as their dominant language, entered into the program.
Okay. What about primarily Spanish?
So
native
the
Spanish
Spanish is a little bit different. We don't test them per se at the district level. We allow the schools to test because that's their bilingual program, and so they just follow the same procedures as any student who speaks another language at home is tested with a state assessment.
Okay. And out of those 48, roughly, and again, I won't hold you to these numbers, but do you recall like how many were had non-family members, that had no family members already in the program out of the 48?
Yeah, that
I want to
that's
say it
a
was like 5 or 6.
number I would have to get back to you on.
Less than 10. I was pretty, from what I just heard, I didn't get details.
So there's more at Maya Angelou that have family members than it is McClintock, because obviously McClintock just, it's in its third year. So it's a different number at McClintock than it is at Maya Angelou.
So thank you. I think there's definitely interest.
But we do have
in the
that
community.
data, I just didn't.
That's fine. No, it's just very small though, right? And that's a concern that I hear frequently from families that want to participate, that are on these waiting lists, that are 50 people long. None of them are going to get in, or maybe just 1 or 2. And so it definitely is something we don't want to rush, but there is definitely the interest and desire to have that program. So I'm looking forward to seeing it happen.
So another innovative thought that I had as I sit here with our 2 ASL teachers is, wouldn't it be amazing to think about the possibilities of an ASL dual language program? Just a seed.
Well, you mentioned that high school student. I mean, she was amazing. I don't know how fluent she's considered, but she gave that whole speech in ASL, which was remarkable. Bailey Easterday, I think was her name. I mean...
So, did you say, I think I heard you say there's 11 of our 15 elementary schools currently have a bilingual program. Is it bilingual? Is that the right word?
A late exit bilingual program.
Okay. Yeah. And you were saying those are potential candidates for two-way dual language. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes, so potentially any school that currently houses a late exit bilingual program, for every one bilingual late exit classroom, you potentially could add 2 dual language classrooms. Those are the possibilities.
Okay.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I was caught by a lady at church the other day, and she could not say enough good about our dual language program. She had plenty to say, and it was all good. And I just thought, okay, that's wonderful. And I think, are we continuing to see as many young Spanish speakers? Is there going to be a pipeline of young children that speak only Spanish for two-way, or are we going to have to transition to a one-way dual language? Do you guys I'm not sure, is it native Spanish speakers? Do we see the same number coming in each year?
We have consistently maintained the numbers in our bilingual classrooms, if not grown.
Okay.
And I think many of our teachers can attest to that are in our audience as they have the students sitting in their classrooms.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us for this two-way dual language. Once we get it you know, if we can expand it. And I know it's a challenge. We have 2 schools right now that we recognize as two-way dual language schools, but if we could get those in other places, it would be great. I do appreciate the sentiment. Let's not get ahead of our skis and make it harmful. So, but I think it's wonderful.
I was in the two-way dual language program, and it's really cool because you're not only proficient in 2 languages and biliterate in both languages, but it also helps with your cognitive skills and just helps develop your brain more in general. So it's really exciting. I'm excited.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Mrs. Duran, Mrs. Lobos. Anybody, any of our audience want to comment?
Hi, I'm Amber Havers. I'm the teacher of the deaf in the pre-kindergarten, first and second grade ASL English bilingual program at Chess. And I know it's a little different because we fall under special ed, but we are a bilingual program. So I would be very interested in being involved in any of the work that's happening around bilingual or dual language. I'd love to partner with that work. So, and I think it would be an awesome opportunity for siblings of our deaf students to be involved in a dual language program, or family or friends. I think it'd be wonderful because we have become kind of the regional center, and we serve students from 6 different districts. And so it would be wonderful to have that possibility. So I just wanted to bring that up and say that.
That's impressive just to watch. Thank you.
Hi, I just had a question for the ladies presenting. So if this comes to like grade, for example, I teach 6th grade, and would that look like flipping with a Spanish speaking teacher, or how would that look for us? I'm actually really excited about it. I would love for my kids to be in dual language. I've been looking to take classes so I can speak Spanish myself, because Spanish camp is not enough.
So I'm going to ask them if they want to answer. So I don't want to get into a discussion.
I'm
No, I appreciate that. No, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no,
I just don't want to set a precedent. But Ms. Duran, Mrs. Lobos, and I.
So there's a lot of options available. There are many options available in the delivery, and I think one of the things outlined in the presentation is the importance of both teachers, because students, again, it's valued in both languages, and the goal is by literacy of both. And so that would be part of. So there is not necessarily an answer. That would be part of the input that we would be gathering from staff. Is what are staff seeing in the role? What would they like to see? So that would be something that we would develop collaboratively.
Okay. And at 6th grade, it's super important. I know at my school, we have 6th graders coming in that are still reading at the 2nd and 3rd grade level. And it's not that they can't do it. They read 6th grade material. It's just that they still have trouble decoding and everything like that, because they speak 2 languages. I mean, I would have trouble if someone gave me a 6th grade book in Spanish. I mean, there's a few words maybe. I could definitely get naughty ones.
Don't tell me that's because you hear them all the time.
And hopefully those wouldn't be in the textbooks. But.
Yeah.
Mr. President, Michelle Whitney, Superintendent Whitney, and the board. My name is Jeanette Lujan. I'm a bilingual teacher at Robert Frost. I teach kindergarten. I don't want to make long comments, but I want to speak a couple things. In my travels worldwide, which are fairly extensive, I've come across places in the world where people speak 3, 4, 5 languages. We're one of the few monolingual, relatively monolingual countries in the world, and it's kind of made us a laughingstock around the world, that we don't produce kids that are functionally bilingual or highly competent bilinguals in more than one language. I have the great fortune right now of having 2 adult volunteers in my classroom. One's a former principal from Richland, and one is an engineer. They both come to volunteer in a bilingual program for 2 reasons: to help my kids and to learn a second language. They are both now speaking Spanish. I taught in Bolivia in a school that was a dual language school. Kids from all over the world, we had 50 countries, exited our school at grade 12 speaking at least 2 languages, usually 3 or 4. So my personal experience is it's possible, it's doable, you have to have a vision, and I think that the only thing that limits us is our lack of vision and our lack of commitment. In my current school, I had a little girl last year who was incredibly gifted. She came into kindergarten reading at a 2nd grade level, and I really struggled to find challenges for her because I had kids coming in that couldn't even hold a pencil. So my Russian-speaking colleague and I came up with the idea. She was fascinated by Russian. So she started visiting the Russian class every day for an hour during some of my literacy time. And so she exited kindergarten speaking Russian, a lot of Russian. So I think that we're just limited by our own lack of vision sometimes. And if you move forward with a methodical program with people that have a commitment to high literacy in both languages or more than one language, I think that that vision is possible, and I think it's the vision for the future. We're in an ever-growing world where communication is rapid, where we hear news 3 seconds later, and we can't afford to be a monolingual nation. That's a thing of the past. We're a bilingual nation, we're multilingual nation, and I think we're only limited by our lack of vision. So my hope is to see this vision increased, and as Superintendent Whitney said, to proceed in an educated manner, looking at best teaching approaches, and with people that support this, like myself and other bilingual teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lujan. Okay. So we'll move on to agenda item number 12, future agenda items. So let me ask first, is there anything, board, this is your chance to, anything in our discussion tonight that you might want to add as a future agenda item? Mrs. Whitney, do you have a agenda for next meeting?
Sure. So I have the agenda for the couple meetings because we have a little bit of a break here over the Independence Day holiday. So our next board meeting is July 24th. We will have a study session around the topic of equity. We're going to start that conversation. You'll have a board report on some site planning, some specific, I think, innovative ideas around site planning for Elementary 16 that Dr. Reyes will be sharing. There'll be an extended budget or study session during the board meeting that's around the 18-19 budget. I did also want to get on the board's radar screen then that in August, our first board meeting in August, the study session will be the district, your planning around district annual objectives, and remembering that these are district annual objectives that we would start focusing on in January. You identified objectives for us last year in about this time that we're focusing on now. During that study session is where we plugged in your request, Dr. Richardson, to talk about live streaming board meetings. So that will be integrated into the study session. And then during the board meeting on the 18th, there's a new piece that's required as part of the budget process where you will be required to approve a 4-year projected budget. That's a new piece. So we're just going to do a report on the 18th about that. So that's the agenda for the next couple board meetings.
Okay, thank you. So this comes to agenda item 13, communications. Mr. Lehrman.
We said it last time. I just wanted to say thanks again to all the teachers that are here for teaching our students. But what we said last time, thank you for all those teachers that work late hours at the end, helping a lot of our students who are very close to graduation but not quite there, get what they needed done in the 11th or 12th hour. And again, we appreciate all teachers. I also appreciate the comment that was just made by a teacher about understand it's difficult to often teach to your students unique needs, whether they need additional help with something or whether they're a high cap student. And that's awesome, coming up with ways to help those high cap students. And I think that segues into a topic that we'll discuss at our equity meeting that will come up, I'm sure, is what additional resources, what additional planning programs, set up do we need in order to make sure that each student in Pasco gets taught to the level and to their unique needs, whether it's special additional needs or whether it's a kid that comes into kindergarten who already knows how to read and doesn't need to go spend every day learning their ABCs. And I share one personal story that I've been sharing a lot lately is I was in kindergarten 36 years ago. I was lucky enough to be privileged enough to go to preschool, and 8 or 9 kids at my preschool that went to my elementary school all knew how to read going into kindergarten. And I remember, and I've just started thinking about this lately, in kindergarten, 35 years ago, they took those 8 or 9 students, plus a couple from the other kindergarten class. I think we only had 2. And every day when everyone else is learning their ABCs, they took us to the library. And I'm guessing that it was a caring teacher. It might have been a parapro. I'm not sure, but taught us to the unique level that we had, so that we were able to keep learning at that level without adding additional burden onto the teacher in the general classroom when they're trying to teach kids how to hold their pencils and teach colors and teach skills that we say that every kid should know coming in, but we know that's not the case. And so we'll have that discussion, I'm sure, at the equity discussion a month from now. And also just thanks to all the teachers that are innovative and come up with ways outside the box to help their students with unique needs.
I want to show my appreciation to all the teachers also. It was a great year, and I know that the teachers that worked really hard to help all those last-minute kids make graduation. I know that there was a lot of extra hours put in, and a lot of kids that made graduation that wouldn't have done it without the extra help of teachers and administrators. So I really appreciate all the hard work and all the hard work that went into graduation. And thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. And have a great summer.
I guess I can't touch my microphone. I'm kind of jealous, but I just won't touch it. Yeah, thank you for being here. I love this board meeting. These are my favorite board meetings when there's a lot of engagement. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It emphasizes the point that we all, even just between the board members, have different ideas and experiences and backgrounds, and obviously not all teachers have the same ideas and thoughts and backgrounds. So it just really is invigorating. You're welcome to any board meeting in the future, and it'll be live streamed hopefully next year. The one point I want to make, and I appreciate this comment too about our country being somewhat monolingual and compared to the world, and I think that's an underrepresented or under-identified reason why we are behind other countries across the world. And to drive home the point of our student board rep input, Ms. Stoll had made a comment of being a dual language, using a different part of our brain, and that's absolutely true. When I was a kid, I think that, and this may still be the requirement, 2 years of a foreign language. I took German. I don't remember it. I mean, it was like a token 2 years, right? So I learned Spanish later fluently, and that was amazing. But if our country would kind of make that more of a priority, I think we would start to rise back up in the world scale as far as what our kids are able to accomplish, because they're certainly capable. And just want to thank again our student board reps. You guys are awesome, and look forward to working with the student representatives next year.
So I just want to thank everybody on the board for the opportunity to be here and involved with the community and with my school. And it's something that I know I'll always remember, and it has been my most memorable high school experience. And I think it's made me more aware of what goes on here, and it's made me more involved with my peers. And I just greatly appreciate it. And thanks to my mom too, because she's the one that encouraged me to do this. And I didn't realize how impactful it would be on my life, and I would do it again, of course.
I also want to say thank you for selecting us to be on the board. I got the chance to go to the conferences, the WASFA, and then to go to Olympia. And I met so many students in different ways of how the districts work, and it just opened my eyes of how many opportunities are out there for us. And Isabel and I decided to say thank you at the end, so you guys can remember how grateful we are. And I mean, we'll see you guys this week still, and we'll come back and visit. And thank you.
Thank you, ladies. And thank you to those who have come and those who have stuck it out to the very end. You guys are wonderful. We appreciate your input. We all have different ideas. Unfortunately, we're going to fall somewhere on the spectrum. We're not all going to get everything we want, but your input helps us make a better informed decision. So thank you for being here. I see is Mr. Brazington here? He left, okay. Yeah, so I know Mr. Brazington personally. He's helped us out with some scouts. You who are at Robinson know that he cooks, and so he came and helped us with our cooking merit badge. And I see he's lost some of his instruments. He's been wearing a cast and had his arm in a sling, so you can. He's healing, which is good to see. So last weekend I was in Olympia for a WASDA board meeting. I sit on the WASDA board and had lots of good discussion about some things that are coming up in education. One of the things that did come up there was equity. And I know there's going to be lots of conversation about equity going forward. I believe there has been, and we even in our board are going to try and set some definition for what equity looks like in our school district. So we invite you to be involved in that as well. And I would just invite my fellow board members in September is the WASDA Legislative Assembly. That's where WASDA sets their priorities for the upcoming legislative session. And any of you who can make time to be there, it would be, I think it would be worthwhile and interesting for you to come and observe that. So with that, okay. So that concludes, we do not have an executive session tonight, correct? So that concludes our board meeting. With that, we are adjourned.